Uh, well, hello, this is Elaine Glover on Kingdom Connect, and today I'm speaking to Craig Saul. And have a guess where I met him? It was a most strangest place, but I'd written a book about kindertransport, Swanage, kindertransport, and the Bournemouth Refugee Committee connection. And I self published it and put it on eBay. And you bought it, didn't you, Craig?
That's right. And then we started a correspondence because it was something I'd not come across before. And there were so many interesting things in there and little facts that I picked up about my dad's background, which I know we'll come on to in a minute. But it just started a dialogue that seems to have grown and grown from there.
Yeah, and also I think you were quite surprised that you saw a picture of Roger Brown, who used to live in Swanage and looked after your dad.
Well, that's right. I'd only ever heard of Roger. I never met the gentleman, but uh, my father had related to him, and as I grew up, he renewed his relationship with Roger. I used to pop over to him when we moved back to this country, and I used to get the occasional sort of Christmas gift and a book, and everything was signed in a flourishing. Might as well have been a quilt pen by Uncle Roger. So I only ever knew him as Uncle Roger, but I never met the gentleman. But from what I gather, rather eccentric fellow, but equally very charming and
Well,
obviously
yes,
a good boon.
because the thing is, I mean, I've been a radio presenter for quite a long time, and I've met a lot of Jewish people and people that have know a lot about kindertransport and have the Holocaust Memorial. And when I was a radio presenter at Purbeck Coast, it was the time when they had the Holocaust memorials, and my friend and Josephine Jackson were going to come on the radio to talk about kindertransport. And we discovered Trevor because we Googled up Holocaust and Swanage and we came across Trevor Chadwick. But my greatest thing was when I was talking to Alfred Batstorff because he came to Swanage and he left me all his memoirs before he passed away. And have a guess who he was talking about? No other than Roger Brown. So that was quite fascinating. So let's talk about your father Gary because he spent quite a time in. I know that he went to Bournemouth later on, but he did spend quite a time in Swanage, didn't he?
He did indeed. I mean, just as a little bit of a backstory, my father was actually born Günther in Berlin in 1924, and he was very fortunate at the age of 14 to be on the very first kindertransport that came over to the UK and landed in Harwich or docked in Harwich on December the 2nd, 1938. They put them into the camp into a holiday chalet camp at Dovercourt, and then on from there after a few weeks onto the Dorset Rotary camp, and that's what brought him through to Swanage, where he spent a period of time before eventually he found a foster parent. So he's always had an attachment to the Swanage area, a very firm attachment to Bournemouth, where he ended up, and certainly Dorset as a whole were they were effectively his adopted home.
Well, amazingly, like when obviously when we found out about Trevor Chadwick and everybody was, oh, Schindler's List of Swanage, and all about Trevor. But the Bournemouth refugee were very key uh, because they collected a number of these kinder transport children, like Alfred Batstorff, like your father Gary, and then took them to people like Roger Brown or various places while they were being sorted out.
That's
And
right.
it
Sorry,
was
go on.
amazing. It's, people see like Trevor Chadwick and Sir Nicholas Winton as being the key people, but very few people talk about Florence Nankyvel, who started the kinder transport, and also the Bournemouth Refugee Committee. Now, I'll just tell you this and then you can continue. I was really amazed because one of the ladies in the Jewish synagogue, she was given a booklet all about the Bournemouth Refugee Committee with all the names of the people and all about their teeth and their hair and whatever. And she sent it to the Werner Jewish Library, And, if you want to find out anything about these people, you're not allowed to. So it really annoyed me in a way because I'd love to find out more about Alfred Batzdorf. So, yeah, so you carry on now where we left off.
Yeah, I think just coming in on the back of that, there are a lot of unsung heroes. There are the more publicized ones, such as Sir Nicholas Winton. You've mentioned Trevor Chadwick in there. The people who organized the things, the people who then organized the funding when the children got there, the ones who found the foster homes, the people who actually became the foster parents. They're all great heroes. And you mentioned the Bournemouth Refugee Committee. There was a lady on it, Ethel Mooring Aldridge, who ultimately became my father's stepmother. So Miss Aldridge, he only ever referred to her. It took me years to actually find out her first name. He revered her as a true saint. So he only ever referred to that to her as that. She was a lady of independent means, I believe it says in the census of the Times. She had a gardener, a chauffeur, a housekeeper, and so everything was taken care of. And she took my father in and took him in as a son. And as I say, for the rest of her life and for the rest of his life, he only ever talked in glowing terms about her. He had one of the very best experiences, and I know they were mixed between the 10,000 children that came over. Some did not enjoy the experience and were treated effectively as child labor, but a lot of them loved their foster folks. And my father, I mentioned his love of Dorset, Bournemouth, Swanage. Even beyond that, he had a love for the rest of his life of Great Britain. They were the country that took him in. They were the country that gave him, if I use the phrase, safe haven, and that was something he
Yes.
always respected.
But in my study of kindertransport, there's a lot of it's very romanticized. But Gerda Meyer, who also was a Trevor Chadwick child,
Hmm.
hated the school because she was bullied because of her accent. And of course, they're in, when the war first began, they were not very pleasant to these kinder transport. What I didn't realize, I don't know whether it happened to your father, but in the Second World War, they had to report to the police after the age of 16, I
I
think,
believe so, yeah.
because then they became, I can't think of the word, like they had prisoners of war. There was a similar thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, they
Um,
were they were unofficial enemies of the state or potential enemies of the state.
yes.
So
People don't talk about that. So that must have been quite frightening because even at the age of 16, you're still a child. You're not exactly a full-term adult. And I read something in another Swanage booklet about this girl having to go to the police, and as they couldn't go near the sea either, they had to keep away from the seaside. I don't know why, but it was wonderful to think that people of Swanage, in particular, were very kind, weren't they?
they were indeed, and that's why my father had a love of the area. He had a love of Corfe Castle. It tied in so neatly with him. You have to remember as well, the children came over. They very few of them spoke a single word of English, so he was having to learn a language for a very first time. Um, my grandfather, his father, ultimately made it out of the country, presumably before the war started, and came over to the UK. My dad never knew how he got out of
And your
Germany.
grandmother as well, or was it just
Well,
your?
my grandmother, who had converted to Judaism to marry my grandfather, after they separated, quietly returned back to her roots, and she in fact lived in Berlin without any issues throughout the war, and in fact stayed there even
Wow.
after the Russians moved in and before the wall went up. Obviously thought now is the time to get out, and one day packed all of her belongings into two huge carrier bags, put as many layers of clothing on as she possibly could, went out the front door of her house and walked across the border and never turned around and never looked back, and left the house behind and started a new life. But you mentioned the way some of the children were treated as aliens. My grandfather, when he made it over, was again initially treated as a possible alien and
Mm.
enemy of the state. Ultimately, he ended up with the Pioneer Corps, and he fought against the Nazis. He was at Dunkirk on the Allied
Wow.
side in December 1940 when they all had to be rescued. And interestingly enough, there's a remarkable documentary which won the Academy Award for the best documentary that year, Into the Arms of Strangers, which is all about the kindertransport. Not only does my father appear very fleetingly in some of the newsreel footage, but so too my grandfather when they pan along the Pioneer Corps, and I can say, "Whoa, there's my granddad." The only moving footage I've ever had or seen of him. So it's that brought a tear to the eye.
Well, my link to uh, all of this was the fact that I realised when I was doing ancestry and talking to people on the radio that my relatives, my ancestors, were Zankers. So I looked on the internet and on the ancestry, and discovered that Irma Zanker, my distant cousin, was a child escort on the very first kindertransport, which is why I kind of got on well with Alfred. And when you told me about your father, I thought, wow, because you've got some link, together. And one of the other Zankers, because a few of them were murdered, but one Zanker, Paula Zanker, was a lawyer. And there was a guy called Major Plagg from the Werner Ghetto, and he saved about 400 or 500 Jews because all he did was, as he said, did his job and made them work so they didn't end up in the gas chambers. And when they went to Nuremberg, she helped him not to be sentenced to either death or to go to prison. So, it was quite amazing the links when you look into it. But one of the things I really enjoyed was when we had the event at the bandstand in May on the 15th, because one, I got to see you and I got to see Paul Walder, who came with Valentina and Bruno, his adult children. And
All the way from Chile.
all the way from Chile, yes. I mean, it's a long way. But to see them standing by the Trevor Chadwick statue was absolutely unbelievable. But for me, the biggest thing was that Bill Nankivel, who actually looks like Florence in his
Mm.
features, I didn't know, and he turned up at this event, and you met him, didn't you?
Absolutely, and that was the incredible thing. We've been talking about unsung heroes, and these are all people that, and you and I were meeting for the first time, but all of these other people, we were coming together for the first time, and yet we all, or I certainly felt that we all had a something major in
In
common.
common.
There was that common link, and I've been very lucky. I met at a Harwich presentation at the Harwich Museum to commemorate an anniversary of the first kindertransport. I met a gentleman whose mother was on the very first kindertransport, and he suddenly said, as this piece of newsreel footage came up on screen, "That's my mother," and I was like, "And yeah, and that's my dad," and we immediately, almost metaphorically, embraced and hugged. And it was the same thing very much with the Swanage event. We had nothing in common in terms of our past experiences, and yet we had that joint experience that worked all the way through, and we were there for the same reason. We were there to celebrate the heroes, to celebrate our parents, and remember our parents who had been on the kinder transports. We were there to celebrate their families who effectively gave them away and in so many cases never saw them again. And of course, then all the unsung heroes who actually made it possible at great risk, as you've been saying there, some who didn't make it through the situation simply because of the help that they were giving to others. And those are very important people to commemorate.
But one thing, I don't know, I just, I've known Pastor Werner for quite a long time. He came on my radio show, Hope FM in Bournemouth. And I just thought to ask him to come because his father was Wilhelm Oder, and he was an SS member. Whether he was I think he was quite a high ranking in the SS, and he was responsible for killing thousands of Jews because he used them for live practicing killing people. And a lot of not the Gestapo, a lot of the soldiers didn't want to do it. And if they didn't do it, they were sent to the front line.
Mhm.
When you say that they were killed, a lot of the actual German soldiers didn't want to do that, but they were really forced into doing it. So And then he said that, he became a pastor, he became a Christian, and now he works in Israel from time to time with the Holocaust survivors, bringing peace and reconciliation. And I'm glad he came because he was the other side of it, wasn't he, really?
Very much. And I remember when you first told me about him and you said son of an SS officer, and I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say anything. I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. But then you explained the story, and then obviously I met him at myself, and he painted the picture. He said I was going to follow down the same path as my father until suddenly he got the vision in his head. You can either carry on as you are, and you will end up down that same route, and you will end up damned to hell, or you can turn yourself around, turn your life around, fix bridges, make amends for your father's action, and he has made a wonderful life for himself. A truly great gentleman, absolutely.
Well, it is because, I mean, as I say, he goes to Israel and he talks to the Holocaust survivors for peace and reconciliation and builds bridges, which I think that's what we all need to do. But he's also gone to Ukraine as well. Um, but I just found the whole thing was, it was just a godsend. It was meant to be. I really do believe, don't you?
I do. I think that it's so important that we had that event. As I say, not only were we celebrating those from the past, but hopefully we were also painting a picture as to the lessons that we need to learn for the future. Because these things repeat themselves in different ways as history goes on. Man hasn't improved as a species, and we need to
Yes.
start learning. We need to start fixing things. We need to be more open-minded and realize that we have far more as people, as races, as religions, we have far more in common than we have against us. We're all part of the same clan ultimately. So part of it, I went down thinking this is all about keeping the flame alive of the past, and I came away with a much wider message to myself there of let us preach an important message that goes out, and it was so well organized, and as I say, there was a lot that went into it, and I can say to you, I know you were very centrally involved in pulling it all together, and I'm sure sometimes it must have felt like a thankless task because you had to worry about the weather, you had to worry about the insurance, you had to worry about the catering, you had to worry about
Yes.
people arriving on time, organizing the press, and so on. But it all came together, and
Well, it
if there
did.
were little things that went wrong, and there always are with these things, nobody noticed them, I can assure you.
No.
And I'm
Well,
saying
I
that
mean,
publicly now, but they were noticeable.
that's true. But Paul Walder, I mean, he's been on the radio and we've occasionally emailed. And then one day he said he wants to come to England. Can I arrange some meetings? I thought, oh, yes. So I asked Josephine Jackson, who does research, is well known for her, talks for kindertransport in the synagogue. And then, you begin to start. And I didn't know you had to have insurance at the
Mm.
bandstand. They're all learning curves, but at the end of the day, they're really trivial because, what happened on that day was absolutely wonderful. And, we had Len, who is also from the synagogue, talking about his mum. And you could see he was just overawed with it all. He really enjoyed chatting to people. But it was funny when I got an email that said, have you got some buses to London? But then again, you see, when people knew about it, they all wanted to come. And there was quite a lot of people from London. And I know Anita Groves, her father was kindertransport, and he stayed at, what you call it? I think she was a sister of the Queen Mother. I can't remember what her name is. It Bowes Lyon, Lillian
Mhm.
Bowes Lyon, but now she gets all the people's names from Trevor Chadwick, and they collect them into information on database. Um, but it was just such a lovely day, and everybody really enjoyed it. And I liked it. And the reason why I gave people butterflies is
What
because,
you mean one of these?
you still got it? Yes, that's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Because Pavel Friedman, who was in I think it was the Werner Ghetto, he wrote a poem about butterflies, and there is no more butterflies in the ghetto. But actually, you Paul and Anita are the butterflies, aren't they? Because it's like the chrysalis has now awoken, you know. But yes, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, but what I want people to know is, how do you feel yourself in the sense that it's because of these people that you're alive and your children and your grandchildren, and it's the same as Paul's children. I mean, how do you feel about if it wasn't for Florence Nightingale and other people that helped other children, you wouldn't be here, would you?
Exactly. It's a sort of very surreal feeling when you think about it because, as you say, you're trying to hypothesize what would have happened if, if my parents had met other people, I wouldn't be the person I am here today. If that hadn't happened, um, I wouldn't be here today as well. But yeah, it's a strange one, but and equally what happened sort of it truly defines what I am. My father's experience defines who I am, the personality I am. I'm a glass half full or three quarters full, maybe even type person. Because my father, from his experience, took a very positive outlook. You can either consider it's the end of the world, or not having to start again, or you can make do and make good of the life that you've got. So his approach sort of worked its way down to me, and but it is a strange one because I suppose technically I'm classed as a second generation Holocaust survivor in the way that my father is a first generation one, but he probably felt as though he didn't do anything to deserve that tag. He was just put on a train and out you go. He didn't earn a medal for it, and I've done nothing. I just happen to be his offspring. But it's something that you take and you keep, and you as you get older and get to a certain age, you start to think, how can I use this information, this experience, and what I've built up from my father's experience to provide some teachings for the next generation and pass it on to your children and those around you.
Well, that's right. But it was, I don't read. I'm not the best Wells reader by any means, but I have read. John Fieldsend is another kindertransport who came from Sir Nicholas Winton more than Trevor Chadwick,
Mm.
and he was brought up as a Catholic, and later on in life he had a breakdown because he recognised he was Jewish and he didn't know who he was, so he became a Messianic Jew, and he wrote a book. And at the back of it, it tells you actually, if I can find it, I might be able to read it, but I don't know whether I can get it. But it talks about the mother and the father giving him a letter which he found in later life about various people have gone, and soon it'll be their turn to go to the Auschwitz. And
Mm.
it's so sad because so many children came here, but their parents, they were murdered, weren't they? And never went back to some of them did. I mean, Alfred Batstorff went to America. And a lot of like your father, actually did very well in their lives, didn't they?
They did it, and you make and I'll miss the point unless I grab it here. You make an interesting point about how the experience defines you religiously as well. My father's experience was such that he'd had his bar mitzvah when he was 13. He came to this country. He left his previous religion behind. I suspect he thought that that was the bearer of all the bad things that had happened to him in the 1930s, and then being decamped in the UK. And he transitioned over to Christianity. Christianity. He went to Richmond Hill Congregational Church, which is still there in Bournemouth. So he did that, and when it came time to have a child, he brought me up as a little Catholic boy. Both my parents did. And
Yeah.
I was an altar boy when I was whatever it was, 8, 9, 10 years of age. And it is only as you get older that you start to explore your roots and again question, what am I? How do I define myself religiously or culturally or whatever?
Mm.
And I've been very fortunate through work to have the opportunity to go to Israel a number of times because we've had factories out there. The very first time I went, very naively, I thought, gosh, here is a country that was created in the aftermath of the Holocaust. 6 million of these good folk were murdered during the Holocaust. They're all going to be religiously devout Jewish people. I landed there, and it was the most cosmopolitan place I had ever seen. Yes, of course, there are traditional. Some of the villages, parts of Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. But I was expecting something that was going to be ultra orthodox, and I couldn't have been more wrong. And it was at that point I started to question myself and realize that Judaism can be as much a culture as a religion, and there are a lot of clearly 90% I would guess of the population out there that are Jewish are secular Jews, and
Well, a lot of
they
them don't
respect and
believe
love their
in
culture.
God, do that's what I'm
A
sure.
lot of them don't exactly. So,
Yeah.
they recognize the culture and they keep the culture because it is the one bond that holds them together. So people say, "Well, what are you, Craig?" Well, I'm educated as a Christian. That is the religion that I know. Culturally, I have a lot of little traits in me that work back to my forefathers. So I'm a little bit of both. So
Yes.
um,
I know what you
which is
mean.
not a bad thing, maybe.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I was my parents were agnostic, and I became a Christian when I was 15.
Mm,
And fell away and came back in my 40s because you start to think about things. Then I
mm,
discovered I was partly Jewish, but I kind of a mixture of both. They kind of incorporate within each other. But I was going to say about Alfred Batstorff because
mm,
his brother later came with his parents. He wasn't brought as a kindertransport, but he came with his parents, and then they all went to America to live. And Rick he still is very involved with brain surgery, neurologist and brain surgery. And I know that Alfred joined I don't know whether he joined the Navy, he joined one of these forces, and
mm.
his children work in Hollywood. And I've always found this, a lot of these kinder transport children are either brain surgeons or, they've got quite high up in work. It's kind of giving them some kind of, something to think, well, it could have been this, but I'm going to do what I can and do well in life. Um, and that's what I've found. But it was funny because reading Alfred's memoir, he was a porter at a hotel, Sandbanks,
Hmm.
and he was only very young. And one time he had to escort this couple, the elderly couple, home, and the man. Uh, he collapsed, and the old lady was trying to get off with him, and he ran as fast as he could back to the hotel. But it was just funny, all the things. But he went to the Wooden Garden Synagogue, and
Hmm.
he came back to faith as a Jew because they were so kind to him. But when you think about it today, this is another question.
Hmm.
We aren't so kind to refugees today, are we really?
We're not, and these are learnings we should be taking away and working on. And the perspective from my past gives me a different perspective in the way I approach things. We need to provide safe havens for those who are seeking them, and equally, when you look at the reasons why people would like to come to this country, it is still a great place. You can see it offers a beacon of light to so many folk, and we need to learn to cooperate, to work with each other, to work together as a team, and accept and respect other people as well. And there are just so many lessons that flow from what happened in 1938, 1939 with the kindertransport, and we need to always be well aware of them.
Well, I think so because, Roger Brown, I mean, he used to have lots of children going there, providing them clothes, taking them out, just being a friend, you know, playing not games because they were not little, but they had a whale of a time really. And even Alfred Batstorff
Hmm.
spoke very kindly of Roger Brown. And apparently his parents had died on the Titanic. Whether
So he
that's
claimed.
true, yeah, so he claims.
Hmm.
But yes, I mean, it was just in Swanage. They always seem to have a love for people. I can't really explain it,
Hmm.
but they always help people. Even now, you read on Swanage Matters that but somebody's helped so and so, and they've done this. And I just think that's great. It's nice to be in a community where people, help one another.
Yeah, and I I think you're spot on there. It is a small town. I won't say it's isolated because you can be in Poole in whatever half an hour, and you can be in Dorchester and this and that. But certainly, as you go back in time, and even today, it does have its degree of isolation, and I think that makes for a very strong community a spirit and a feeling of giving as well.
Well,
So
yes.
it's a
Uh,
lovely little town.
Well, it is. I mean, when I was on the radio, they had all sorts of groups for food banks, depression, older people, and every month they used to have a meal in say, the Methodist rooms for people that were on their own.
Hmm.
And I've never known such a strong community as Swanage. Now, I've only got a few minutes left. Now, is there anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, the we sort of fringed on it a little bit, but the whole experience reading your first book, the Swan heading to Swanage. I've started going through obviously, but I was there myself. The second book on the butterflies book has got me going, and I've started to put out some contacts again because again, it's all part of belonging and joining with people who you have nothing in common with and yet everything in common with. So I've already spoken to and met up with a fellow called Mike Levy, who did a talk on the kindertransport in our neck of the woods in Felixstowe. He's written a book called Get the Children Out and was also a prime driver in the statue or memorial that was erected on Harwich Quayside to commemorate the arrivals of the children. So I'm starting to build up relationships there, and I've exchanged information, given him what I can now as well, in terms of my father's story. I know, talking about things that are happening currently, there is a history teacher at a school in Southwest London who is planning into his syllabus the kinder transport subject for next semester, so in September time as well, and he's put his hands out and said, "Is there anybody who can provide me with information on their parents or are prepared to respond to communications from my pupils on that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can give a little something back." So at the moment, the last few years, I've been drawing information out of people. Now the question is, it's only limited, but what can I give back to again help
Maybe
that
you
long-term
should write
future?
a book.
I've written a chapter in your book, but that's the first book.
Yes.
But that's probably and it was only 4 pages long, and that's probably as far as I can go on that. People don't want to know my life story, but and I wish this is the one frustrating thing. The questions I would ask my father if he was still with us now are so much wider than I did before he
Would he
passed
have
away a number of
told
years
you?
ago.
Would he have told you about it?
Oh, he would have talked openly. If you asked the questions, he would have talked openly. It wasn't a subject that he would jump into and declare in the same way that in Germany in the 1930s, he didn't talk very much about what happened there. Just one or two incidences, such as when he and all the other Jewish children were expelled from their school. That sat with him, things like that. But I never delved into those things, and I think again with the advantage of age and experience and knowledge of the subject now, the questions I would ask him now would be just so much wider than I
Hmm.
could have done 12, 13 years ago when
What
he
about
when he
when
passed
he
away.
left? Did his mother say goodbye? Did he go on his own? How did he leave?
A good question. I believe he most of the children on that very first kinder transport were in an orphanage. So I believe he came from an orphanage, although I don't know it. And it's quite possible that his parent or parents, because they had separated at that point, deliberately put him there into that situation so that he would be one of the first to leave.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to believe, but I
So
don't. I don't know, and I can never find out.
one of the first things they did on the Crystal Night of the Crystal Night, the broken glass,
Hmm.
they set fire to orphanages and synagogues.
Hmm.
And it
Very
was
much.
terrible because I think Irma Zanka worked in an orphanage. She was a special needs teacher. But, it's very difficult to find the information that you want because Edmund Nankivel was her son, but he's in his 90s now. And I tried to
Hmm.
ask him to come. It would have been great if he could have come to the event in Swanage, but he's too old, the same as John Field's end.
Hmm.
But that's what I'd like to find out more nitty gritty information about what actually happened. Do you think he was bullied when he was here because he was German, or did he know a certain amount of English?
I think he must have picked it up okay. He's never mentioned it. He went to the school he went to was Collegiate School in Bournemouth, which I believe is now a hotel. So, but yeah, I've got one or two of his report cards because I've managed to access those through the Association of Jewish Refugees. So
Yes.
that's been very helpful. But obviously, learning subjects through a second language which you have don't even know yourself yet is made it very difficult for him. But I don't think he was tall and gangly, so at least he wasn't 5 foot tall and going to be bullied by 6 foot tall bullies. He was taller than them, so it's he escaped that part of it. And the fact is he never mentioned it, so I have to believe he got along okay, but I don't know.
I think Paul Walder was very taken aback by it all. He got quite emotional, actually.
Mm.
And he received my book and he was really pleased because it's a memory, isn't it? Because if you're not living in a country, it's not quite the same thing, is it? So it's got the pictures of, but the picture I love that you took was of the panoramic scene of the bandstand. It was fantastic.
And it just shows the turnout that was there on the day. I just thought let's take this shot there. So I'm not in the picture, but everybody else is, and it just showed what a great turnout and on what was a nice, warm, sunny day. And I think you can say that the sun shone on us that day. You had a plan B in case it rained, but thankfully we were able
Well,
to
no,
keep it.
I think that was really good, and it was circular, so people could hear and see everything, couldn't they?
Yeah, tremendous day. So the challenge now is how to follow it up, and that's one I leave with how do you do what is the next stage?
Well, I have got a next stage, but I'm going to keep. Yes, but I have got a next stage, which I hope would take place in the near future,
Hmm.
because we can't stop there. We need to have more events to celebrate. I mean, there was a guy in the synagogue who I didn't know was a kindertransport because nobody
Hmm.
told me. And had I known, he could have come and spoken as well. I felt a bit awful, really, because there must be that. I remember when I was researching, there must be about 40 children that came to Swanage through the Bournemouth Refugee Committee.
I would think at least, yeah.
At least they sent a tremendous amount of children, first of all, to Swanage. And on their first night, I think they were sent to a boys' brigade grounds, and it was absolutely freezing, and somewhere else, and the pipes had frozen. So they sent them to a place near a hotel, and then they went off to Roger Brown. But
Hmm.
yes, so 2 minutes left. What's your final word to help people whose family members are they don't know anything about kinder transport, but they know their family member came here through that?
Yeah, you've just got to start putting out the feelers. There are a number of books out there. Obviously, two great books from yourself to get you going. You can contact the Association of Jewish Refugees. There's the Kindertransport Association that is involved,
Yes.
and they all hold regular events. And I have to say, the people there um, have been very supportive of me. But it's a case of a slow burner. You've got to put out the feelers, find the right people, and then you can
Yes.
start to get piece together information. Thanks to you, we know the 8 child chaperones, let's call them, who, including your
Yes.
aunt, who were on that first kinder transport. That's 8 of them. There were 196 kids. I know my dad was one of them. I know the fellow whose mother was on there as well, and I'm slowly piecing together a few more of those gaps. So it's a slow burner, but the puzzle starts to come together. You just got to be patient.
And what I've found very, very helpful is on Facebook, the Kinder Transport Dialogue. They've been really
Yes.
helpful.
Fantastic. And
Yes.
there's a lady called Amy Williams who has joined the AJR and who is now compiling lists of the actual kinder transports that came out. She hasn't gone back to December 38 yet, but some of the ones from the spring and summer of 39 she has got, and she's got an army of people descending on her saying, "What about my mother? What about my grandmother? What
Yeah,
about my
she's a
mother?"
bit overwhelmed, isn't
Just,
she?
just a little bit, but she's an angel, so I know she'll get round to everybody.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Craig. I know we'll probably meet again or be doing something soon. I have got it up here, but we're going to be quiet until I get it together. But you
Yeah.
take care.
And you.
Love to Carol and your family, and it's wonderful to speak to you again. Bye
And
bye.